there is the eventuality that at some point Dana White is going to leave the UFC. However, that is not what is happening right now. In recent times and in recent news, there have been speculations that Dana White was going to leave the UFC and perhaps maybe give the position to somebody that is equally qualified, such as maybe Hunter Campbell. Some names have been mentioned, such as Chael Sonnen and Daniel Cormier, which Dana White shot down previously with claiming those particular names in the past, but in the recent times have also shot down the idea that he is going to leave the UFC at any particular given time. Now, why is it that it's important for Dana White to be part of the UFC? For one, you got to understand that with Dana White, he is in a position where he is the staple of the company. Let's just be honest about it. Dana White is bigger than most of the fighters that are involved in mixed martial arts, and in particular, the organization and the roster of the UFC. So with that in mind, what you have is somebody that brings stability to the brand. Somebody that can be looked at and said, you know what? This man is somebody that is familiar to a brand that we want to consume on a weekly basis. He is the guy that speaks at the press conference. He is the guy that speaks at, let's say, just random media outlets for the UFC to try to promote a fight or try to promote a brand in any kind of way. Slap fighting comes to mind with the other extended brands that they are trying to push in that particular organization. But nonetheless, Dana White isn't going anywhere. And the fact that you could even fathom an idea of a UFC without Dana White, I think is really an alienable concept at this particular point. Now, why do I say that? Dana White has been the guy that has been running the UFC in terms of contract negotiations, in terms of understanding, let's say, the small details to the shows, the production. This is something that's not often talked about. Also, here's another thing that I think is very underrated about Dana White that a lot of people don't take into consideration, which is this. He has a strong insight in understanding the inevitable chaos that is about to ensue. And why do I say that? Let's go back to UFC 229. By the way, a particular event that I constantly go back and reference in this particular content, in this particular video and a particular channel at that. Why? Because it is one of those situations that I think can be used as a case study for future mixed martial arts promotions, and in particular the UFC. Because Dana White knew that he was not going to put the belt around Khabib at the time where they knew that chaos was going to ensue because of the fact that Khabib jumped over the fence, tried to fight the corner of Conor McGregor, in particular Dylan Dennis, and the rest of his coaches. It became somewhat of a problematic event in terms of what could happen if they were to put a belt around Khabib. Dana White had the insight to recognize that if he puts the belt right here in front of everybody, that it was going to go wrong and everybody was just going to start off and kick off a riot. They kicked off a riot anyway. You could even look at some of the videos they've had in MMAfighting.com back in UFC 229 when you had Khabib supporters fighting Irish supporters, in particular the ones that came there for Conor McGregor. One guy got knocked out, and on top of that, he fell right on his head in a concrete floor. Now, obviously he was all right, but the way that he was fighting, he didn't look like he was very serious. But a lot of these Khabib supporters, they looked very serious. A lot of them were a mixture of Russian and Dagestani, Eastern European, and Muslim guys, which would encompass maybe Black Muslims, Pakistani Muslims, Arab Muslims, along with these other Eastern Europeans and Chechens and other Muslim groups that were basically there to fight Conor McGregor supporters. So Dana White decided they were just going to let Bruce Buffer announce it in the cage and give the belt in the locker room. And did Dana White do a good job? and having insights of knowing that chaos was going to be inevitable at an event like that, with the promotion it had going on, with the dolly in the bus, with Dylan Dennis egging on the situation? Absolutely. Absolutely, he had a great insight. And this is something that you can never take away from Dana White. Dana White is the type of guy that has great social intelligence. And this is the reason why he is where he's at. You know, another thing about Dana White that you really need to know is that he is a hero to a lot of people that make it as a big-time CEO that don't have a college degree. Mark Zuckerberg is in that list. Yes, Mark Zuckerberg had gone to Harvard but did not complete, so therefore he's not really a college graduate in the technical sense of it all. Dana White had no experience in college at all, never went to a university or anything like that. He was just a guy that knew certain people in powerful positions because guess what? He was the type of guy that everybody wanted to be around. He's the type of guy that sort of has this crossover between a Suge Knight type of figure and a little bit of a Mark Zuckerberg. Now, obviously, Mark Zuckerberg is way wealthier. He has a bigger company and this and that. But the energy is all the same in the way that I'm trying to convey this message and make you understand who Dana White is. On top of that, here's another Dana White moment that I think is really important for people to ponder upon. This guy got kicked out of the Hard Rock Hotel casino because he was beating the dealers in blackjack by the millions. And again, I'm not a gambling man. In Islam, it's haram to gamble. But one thing that you have to take into consideration is the intelligence of Dana White being able to beat a system like this that has gone on for years and years and decades into basically taking people's money. And now he became such a threat to this particular casino that he was taking millions from them because he's a genius. He is somebody that has a certain IQ that you cannot teach, and this is a reason why he has high social intelligence to get in with the Ferritta Brothers as he did early on, and quite frankly, to even manipulate these guys into spending their money investing in this sport that Dana White truly believed in. So not only is he one of the most luckiest men on earth, but he's also the most socially intelligent man on earth. And that particular situation with the Hard Rock and Casino is a great example of that. And guess what? Guess what happened in the midst of that? The UFC got kicked out of the Hard Rock Casino, and they never had fight nights there ever since. You talk about the Apex Center that is currently present in the UFC stratosphere right now, right? The Hard Rock Casino was the fight nights for UFC at the time, and I think even Chris Lieben and Anderson Silva had fought in that platform. But nonetheless, one thing that I got to tell you guys within this whole 8-minute rant about Dana White and his history and everything that I could fit in this short amount of time, I got to tell you that he's not going anywhere. He's going to stay as the president of the UFC. And not only that, this is a guy that champions freedom of speech. You look at all the things that he had allowed over the years, the list that could go on. Colby Covington, speaking of Leon Edwards' dead father, is one of them. Among the other antics with Conor McGregor leading up to the Khabib fight, and then the list goes on and on and on with the things that these guys say to each other that he allows because he champions it. He even allowed Bud Light into the mix of the UFC, even though they have a different ethos than the dominant red pill, right-wing Muslim fan base of the UFC. And regardless of that, it's what he did, it's what he tried to execute in terms of trying to really show the true meaning of inclusiveness in terms of the modern world that we live in which we have different interpretations of what inclusiveness really means. But nonetheless, that is my 10 minutes that I have. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, and look at all the videos that I have, and don't forget to watch till the end because there's some gems that I have in terms of the explanations and the storylines that I can convey to you guys, among basically teaching you guys about mixed martial arts as a technique, not only as a technique, but also as a lifestyle, but also as a business and everything else in between. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Later.